YouTube, it is me again, your favorite Texas trucker, and this is the second time I've sat down to do the video today. I didn't get to finish the video from this morning because while I was making the video, I got unloaded. They were quite quick, or unloaded. I got loaded. They were very quick about getting me loaded. I didn't expect that. I expected that I was going to have a little bit more time to make the video, and about halfway through it, right about the time I was changing subjects, they came up and let me know they were finished. So I had to cut it short, and I put it up on YouTube, named it Part 1, and so I figured I'd make this second part, which I guess since I cut the first part off, I can get a little bit longer-winded on the second part. Y'all just gonna have to put up with it. Anyway, right now I'm in Texas. I'm down in Richland, Texas. I guess I better note the time because I haven't filled out my logbook yet. It's I got here about 4:45. I'm gonna go ahead and call it a night here. I'm about 3 hours or so away from the final destination, which is in Deer Park, Texas, and I'll leave out of here probably 5 o'clock in the morning or so in order to get there about an hour or so early. So, and that's if I don't hit rush hour traffic, which I very well might. So we'll deal with that tomorrow. So I'll give myself at least an hour and a half leeway to try to make sure that I'm not too terribly late. I'm skimming over the west side of Houston though, so hopefully it won't be too terribly bad. At least maybe I can get through about half of it before it does. Anyway, I was wanting to talk to y'all about owning a truck, okay? Had a lot of people ask me a lot of questions, good questions. And I've got some friends of mine that have gotten into trucks. I've got a friend of mine that he didn't make it. He got rid of his truck. He was in a lease purchase program, and it didn't work out. I've got another friend of mine that was in a lease purchase program, and it didn't work out. And now he's switching to another lease purchase program. So hopefully it'll work out this time. I don't know. He's going to a better program though, for sure. I got a couple friends of mine that have just recently purchased trucks. One of the guys that was commenting on my videos has just purchased his truck, and then I've got a guy that watches our videos or watches my videos that is working on coming over to Triple C, and that's awesome. Yeah, that's great. So I wanted to say something, okay? And this is going to be I got to go a long way in order to put together what I'm trying to say, okay? Because after talking to as many people as I've talked to and listening to the issues that I've listened to and given advice on the issues that I've given advice on, one of the things that I've come to realize is that a lot of people don't really understand the things that go together to influence the freight industry, okay? The freight industry is so intertwined into the rest of the economic system that screwing with one piece of it creates this snowball or this domino effect that hits every aspect of it. And there's two areas recently that have occurred that have created a problem with the transportation industry, okay? Last year was said to have been the best year for the transportation industry since 2008, all right? And in 2008, of course, we know we had the big financial collapse, and then we've been recovering from it since. So what happened is that a lot of people, myself included, figured that we were on this rise, okay? And And so, we all went out and we bought trucks to get out here and become an owner-operator. I mean, you sit down and you look at it, you can make, 33, 35, maybe 45 cents a mile driving for somebody else, or you can make, 250, 260 a mile driving for yourself, all right? And if you're the type of person like I am that has such a difficult time dealing with an employer, then driving for yourself is pretty much a foregone conclusion. So a lot of us, we went out and we made a purchase and we bought a truck, okay? And then this year, they say is the worst year since 2008. And so a lot of these guys like me that went out and we bought our trucks and we got out here on the road, a lot of them didn't make it. They're not making it. Now there's one initial mistake that they all made, and that is that the key to operating a successful business is to keep your overhead low, all right, as low as possible. When you go out and you make a truck payment that is, $750,000 a week, there's no way for you to keep your overhead low, okay? And when you're paying that truck off for years, 5, 6 years, and then you have a $35,000, $40,000 balloon payment at the end of the lease, there's no possible way that you can come out on top, okay? And that's what a lot of these guys did. Not all of them went out and did a lease purchase program with a company. Some of them went out and they did a lease purchase program with, say, Kenworth or Peterbilt or, whatever the case may be. Some of them went out and did like I did, and just purchased their truck outright, or got it financed. But a lot of them still made the same mistake, and that is that they bought late model trucks, 2012, 2013, 2014 trucks, and so on. The cost of the truck is astronomical. You get in there and you look at this and you see the actual amount of expense that goes into that truck, and then to understand that you're never going to own that truck. That truck's never going to be yours. You can say it's yours because you're financing it, but it's never going to be yours. And if you stick with that truck and purchase that truck after the 5-year warranty on the truck runs out, you're an idiot. Because at some point that DEF system, that DPF system in there, the EGR system in there, at some point all that stuff is going to go wrong, and it's not going to be covered under warranty anymore. And unless you've got $20,000, $30,000 set aside into the bank for that one repair, typically the repair is going to run you about $14,000, $15,000. And then on top of that repair, you've got a week of revenue that you've lost. So you need to keep, money aside for that week of revenue also. And unless you've got that set aside, that truck is going to kill your business. It's going to destroy your business. All right, which is the reason why when I went out and bought my truck, I got an old truck, okay? I got an old truck that was pre-emissions. It doesn't have all that stuff, yeah, I've had some high maintenance cost with this truck, but I knew that coming into it. I knew that the trade-off for me, not buying this new truck that's going to have this DEF, DPF, EGR stuff in it, was that I was going to have a high maintenance on the first year, and I know that. I understood that from day one. And, it's kicked my ass, without a doubt. It's definitely kicked my ass, I've had $13,000 worth of repair work in this truck, and I've still got, a turbo I've got to replace. I've got 3 seals or 3 gaskets I've got to replace that I got to pull all that stuff apart. I got a fan clutch going out that I'm going to have to replace. But eventually, at some point, my truck is going to be finished. I'm going to be done fixing it. It's exactly the opposite with these new trucks. You're going to start off with a relatively low maintenance cost, and every year that maintenance cost is going to continue to rise. All right, I started off with a high maintenance cost, and every year that maintenance cost is going to continue to lower. Because once I get the truck where it needs to be, it's a simple matter of maintaining it. All right. So that's the first mistake that a lot of people made, is that a lot of people that I know made, is they didn't keep their overhead low. Their overhead was high. All right, which brings in the second problem. All right, and the second problem is the projections that they made for their income were based off of 2014, and it's not 2014 anymore, it's 2015. And 2014 and 2015 are two totally diametrically opposed years where the freight industry is coming in. 2015 was said to have been the best year for freight that we've seen since 2008, and 2015 is said to be the worst year for freight since 2015. We've had a steady decline in the rates for freight all year long. And I saw this coming last year. All right, I saw this coming last year because there's one key indicator to look for to determine what is going to happen to the rest of your rates, and that is the oil field. You watch the oil field. What the oil field does, the transportation, the general freight transportation follows. Okay, so late last year, you know, we had the drastic drop in oil prices as OPEC began this war against the United States on the oil field front. Okay, and the idea was that these Middle Eastern nations had so much surplus of oil that they were going to make money, even if they could afford to make money even at a lowered cost. And to try to drive American oil companies out of business, they started mass producing oil. So they started flooding the market with oil. Well, when you flood the market with oil, what you have is a demand issue. Okay, you have more oil, you have more supply than you have demand. Well, when you have more supply than you have demand, the price drops, and that's what happened with the oil. So the price drops. All right, and because our oil production is intertwined with the international oil production, you know, there was no way for it to stabilize in America. So the response was exactly what you know, Middle Eastern countries wanted, and that is that the American oil field began to shut down production. Okay, because they could no longer afford to operate at a profit. All right, and when it got to the point where they could no longer operate at a profit, they predicted that they would shut down at least 40% of the oil field. Well, as soon as I found that out, I knew that we were in for a problem. Okay, they ended up shutting down. You know, in some places the statistics read 40%. In some places the statistics read 60%. I don't know what part of that to believe. I'm not clear on whether part of that was the fracking industry and part of it was maybe something else, you know, but it was the oil field in general. And if you were to compromise between the two, you know, one side says 40%, one side says 60%, compromise at 50%, they shut down 50% of the oil field. Well, when they shut down 50% of the oil field, you had all these trucks that were dedicated to the oil field. They were carrying frac sand, they were carrying pipe, they were carrying supplies, they were carrying equipment, all dedicated to the oil field. These were a lot of these guys were small owner operators that had, you know, 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 trucks, you know, in a fleet that were all dedicated to doing the same thing. So when the oil field shut down production, these companies found it too difficult to compete in that market because there was so little demand and so many trucks. And what they did is they started signing their trucks on to other companies, you know, companies like Triple C, where they take their truck out from the oil field company they were assigned on to, and they'd sign it on to general freight companies pulling flatbed or pulling reefer or pulling dry van or pulling, you know, whatever, you know, they were pulling freight. And so you had this big, huge influx into the general freight market, and it created more trucks than there was a demand for the trucks. Okay, now they've been talking about this driver shortage for a few years now, and it's a myth. The whole driver shortage thing is a myth. There's not a shortage of drivers, and the guys that are out here doing this every day, the ones that that are away from home and they're over the road and they're out here and they interact with these companies all the time, they understand it's not a myth. I mean, it's not a real thing. This whole driver shortage thing, it's a myth. There's plenty of drivers out here to deal with the freight that is here. As a matter of fact, at the moment, there's too many drivers out here to deal with the freight that we have, which is what the problem is. This whole driver shortage thing comes from a driver turnover statistic. All right, there is a huge turnover rate at some of these companies. Some of these companies have 150%, 200% turnover rate. That's astronomical, and you're talking about these guys that are coming into these schools like Swift and CR England and Millis and I don't know, all the different companies that have training schools or night transportation and all that stuff, and they're coming in here and they're finishing the initial part of their schooling, so they're counted as an employee, they're signed on as an employee, and then they get out over the road, they don't last 6 months. A lot of these guys quit and they go back to whatever it is they were doing before, and sometimes it's because of medical problems that they can't overcome, and sometimes it's just because they can't cut it out here on the road. This is a hard job. It's a difficult place to be, and and so some of these guys, they just couldn't cut it. Some of them had medical problems that caused them to have to leave the field and go back to doing something else. But regardless, in the first 6 months, you have a huge turnover rate of new drivers. Most don't last 6 months. Of those that last 6 months, most of them don't remain at a company for any longer than 1 to 2 years, because those starter companies, some of them were really good companies. Millis was a great company. They always treated me good. They were a good company, but I could do a whole lot better. And when I look at Millis, I and I don't want to talk bad about them because they are a really, really good company. But it's a company that I look at and I say, man, that's the best place in the world for you to start. You go there, you get your CDL, you work there for a year, year and a half, 2 years. It's a great company. They'll give you good experience. But in my opinion, it's not a place where somebody would stay for 10, 15, 20 years. Now, they have 10, 15, 20-year drivers, don't get me wrong, they do have them. And those guys love Millis. They stay, I'm not sure why. The pay isn't all that great at Millis. It's kind of bottom line pay. You work a whole lot harder than you should have to make a really good paycheck. When I came there, I was making good money, but I was running my ass off too, Anyway, I'm not trying to bash any one of these companies because Millis really was a good company, but these starter companies, they're just not places for people to stay at over a long period of time. And so these guys get there and they leave. And those turnover rates, when these people start leaving these companies, they say, oh, well, we have a driver shortage. We need to recruit 100 more drivers. You don't have a driver shortage. You have a driver retention problem. That's what you have. These drivers, a lot of these guys are going to local jobs. They work there for a year, year and a half, and then they leave and they get a local, day cab job somewhere they can be home with mama every night, and watch TV and eat popcorn and drink beer. The rest of the guys that are leaving, this driver retention problem that they have, it's not a driver shortage problem. But the rest of these guys, they're leaving and they're going to better companies, or they're going out and they're buying their own trucks and they're becoming owner-operators, and they're doing something to make themselves better for their life. So, you've got this problem right here that you have the oil field is shut down, and we've gotten 50% of the oil field trucks over into the general freight. Now, let me take a break for a second. Let me switch gears. All right, because we talked a little bit about oil, and one of the reasons why the oil field dropped is because the rate for oil, the price per gallon dropped. Well, when the price per gallon dropped, then the price per gallon of fuel dropped. All right, well, when the price per gallon of fuel dropped, the fuel surcharges for a lot of us companies, the fuel surcharges stopped. Okay, I see a fuel surcharge maybe 1 out of every 10 loads. But that's not even the worst thing that happened, because these people, these brokers, or these shippers, you know, they say, well, the price of fuel is down, so we're not going to pay as much to haul the freight. You know, like all of our cost for operating this truck is tied up in fuel. I don't know where the hell they get that stupid ass idea from. $13,000 over the last 4 months has been tied up in repairs, not fuel. All right, that's just doing repairs for wear and tear on the truck, and I've got so much more work that I've got to do to it. I've probably got another $13,000 I got to do in the next, you know, in the next few months. You know, you know, people say, well, the fuel cost is the highest cost for an owner-operator, and I don't honestly think that's true. The fuel cost is an expensive cost, but I think it pales in comparison to the cost of the repairs. You see, fuel cost is already figured in. You know that the fuel cost is there's an acceptable amount of money per mile that you have to spend in order to be in business. It costs money. It costs money to run a business. So the fuel expense is figured in. Okay. Now when the fuel prices drop, they may have dropped 40, 50 cents a gallon, but our rates are dropping $1.50 sometimes a gallon. I mean a mile, and so it's not dropping in comparison. You know what I'm saying? No, we're losing about 3 times more in rates than what we're gaining in our per mile cost, and it's kicking our ass. I mean, honestly. So you have these two factors. First, you have the rates have decreased because the price of oil has decreased. The price of oil has decreased. The price of fuel has decreased. So the rate per mile decreases. So the rate per mile decreases. All right, and then you have an influx of drivers coming from the oil field, which shut down. So you got 50% of their drivers are now coming over into the general freight market. And they're you know, coming in and they're competing with us for hauling the freight, which creates a overflow of trucks. So you have a decrease in rates and an overflow in trucks. Well, you have that whole supply and demand issue again. So what happens when you have an overflow of trucks is you have too many trucks for the freight that's there in existence, and so what does that do? It drops the rate down. So now you have 2 factors that are dropping the rate down, but that's not the worst of it, because everything is intertwined. You know what I'm saying? And if you paid attention to the stock markets, you pay attention to the world economics, then you'll understand that China just took a huge hit in their economy. You know, they say the hit that China took is equivalent to what happened to us in the Great Depression. Right? And so some people are like, well, that's way the fuck over in China, you know? Who cares about that? You better care about that, because the Chinese market and the American market are intertwined with one another. Right? I mean, you think about this. What happens when you have this huge crash, this economical crash? We're going to talk about China. You have this huge economical crash. Well, what happens? What happens is people stop buying. They stop buying because they can't afford to buy. A lot of people have gotten laid off. They don't have money. So what happens is that the consumer stops to buy. They stop buying. When people stop buying, producers stop producing. They quit making. All right. Well, you look at the stuff that we haul around here, and hell, half of this shit that goes in this truck comes from fucking China. So if China's production is stopped, then that means America's not getting as many imports. If they're not getting as many imports, then they're not needing as many trucks. And then the fact that the American economy and the Chinese economy are kind of intertwined with each other. And then almost immediately after the Chinese economy crashed, the America Dow Jones index dropped 1,000 points in one day. Well, we got a lot of that back. We ended up at, like, I want to say it was 577 points down, and it'll slowly come back. I mean, this does this all the time. But in the meantime, when this happens, what happens in America? Well, we have this big crash, and so what happens is people quit producing. When people quit producing, then they don't make as much product. So when they don't make as much product, they don't need as many trucks. Well, now they don't need as many trucks to haul freight. the price of freight is down because of oil. The price of freight is down because of an influx of trucks from the oil field, and now the price of freight is down because production is down all the way across the board, pretty much everywhere. So it's the snowball effect that continues to hit and continues to, to affect every area of our industry. So this brings me, and I'm running out of time, so let's try to wrap this up. This brings me to what I'm saying, and that is that if you come into this field, or you come into this industry, and you want to be an owner-operator, it is imperative that you keep your cost down. Trim it down as far as you can trim it down. And then second, it is imperative that you get a good, solid company behind you. It's not going to bleed you dry. A company that's going to try to make every effort that they can make to ensure that you succeed. All right? And I'm going to end that by saying that, in my opinion, Triple C Transit is that company. These guys have had my back more times than I can count, and are continuing to, Great company, great people. I don't know how many more drivers they can take on. They don't have a huge turnover. They've only got a limited number of trailers, unless Kevin's going to go out and buy some more. But I tell you what, man, if you people start applying and you come over there, I could pretty much bet your ass that he'll come up with a trailer somewhere, and he'll put it on your truck. If you do decide to come to Triple C and drive with us, then give them my name as a referral. It helps me out. I get a little bit of a bonus. But the main thing that I wanted to do in this, because I've got a lot of friends that just don't understand what's going on, because they're not paying attention. They get in their truck, they drive their truck, they do their pre-trip, they do their post-trip, they do their maintenance. They don't pay any attention to what's going on in the world. They don't care what's going on in the world. But the thing is that all these things that are going on in the world, they're affecting your bottom dollar. They're affecting what happens out here in this trucking industry. The trucking industry is the backbone of the economy. Anything that happens to the economy in a negative way affects the trucking industry. It doesn't matter what section of it there is. I just saw that 40 Macy's stores are going to be closing by the end or by 2016. 40 Macy's stores. The Macy's stores are huge. 40 of those stores closing down, it's a big impact on the trucking industry. And when you see things like that, it doesn't bode good news for us. Now, my last thing I'm going to say is that rates are coming up. All right, we've rebounded about 30 cents per mile over the last couple of weeks, and I'm hoping that we start seeing that here at Triple C pretty soon. But rates are coming up, at least for the next few months. All right, so y'all take care. Good luck. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, share it. Like it, subscribe. I'm almost at 1,000 subscribers. I only need about 35 more. I really would like to get there. All right, y'all take care. And man, again, thanks for watching. Peace out.